Hi guys, it's me from Neurons and Nucleus, and I'm here with the video on how to balance chemical equations. So, what's the reason for balancing chemical equations? So, as you can see over here, I have an equation which is hydrogen and oxygen producing H2O, which is water, right? So, you have two hydrogens on the reactant side, you have two oxygens on the reactant side, but you have only one oxygen on the product side. It's not balanced, it's not equal. In terms of this question, you're going to have to balance it. The best way I find balancing equations is just to write down reactants and products, right? And count them. So you have reactants and products on both sides. Well, you have reactants and then products over here. So I just put R over this, P over this for products. And then, let me just draw this. And then you can count out, right? You have two hydrogen. And then over here on the product side, you have two hydrogen and only one oxygen. So let's say we multiply the product side by 2. So you do times 2 times 2. This will give us 2 oxygen. Sorry, give me 1 second. This should give us 2 oxygen and 4 hydrogen. Right over here, on the reactant side, you only have 2 hydrogens, but our oxygen count is met. Right, so the best way to balance the reactant side out now would be to multiply the hydrogens by 2. This would equal 4. So the new chemical equation would be this. You have 2H2 plus O2, which only has 1. Normally you don't have to write 1 over here, or for example's sake, I'll write it. But and then for the products, you have 2H2O, right? This is one of the simpler questions. Of course, it gets more tricky, and we're going to take those questions up as well. When you start adding more elements into an equation, it starts to become more and more tricky to solve them, especially when you're timed on writing, on trying to balance a question up. So, onto a more difficult question. I'll show you, and then you could come back and confirm if your answer is correct. Now, I'll give you 5 seconds to pause, and now I'll answer. Alright, so I'll write down on the reactant side, you have aluminum, you have hydrogen, you have chlorine, and then on product side, you have aluminum, you have chlorine, and hydrogen. Or an easier way to write it would be, I guess, you have hydrogen, and then chlorine. Alright, so you have 1 aluminum on the reactant side, you have 1 hydrogen on the reactant side, and 1 chlorine. On the product side, you have 1 aluminum still, but you have 3 chlorines and 3 hydrogens. So, what's a good way to balance this? Well, let's see. First off, you want to add 3 in front of hydrogen and chlorine. So let's do this. Let's try to make this times 3 times 3, which will give you 3 chlorine and 3 hydrogen. Right? So let's see, you have the 3 chlorines. Yeah, and that should be, oh wait, I think this is supposed to be H2. That's why. It's supposed to be H2, so you have 2 hydrogens right here. So that's what makes this question a little more tricky, because I'm wondering why it would have been solved at that point. But so 3 hydrogens doesn't really work, so you're gonna have to use a different number instead of 3. So let's say we double it. Let's double this and make it times 6. Let's say you have 6 hydrogen, 6 chlorine. Now you can do times 3 on this side and times 2 on this side for chlorine. And the only problem you'll have after that is aluminum is going to be multiplied by 2. So you'll have to do aluminum times 2 on both sides. So you can have a chemical equation like this. You have 2 aluminum plus 6 HCl, which equals to 2 AlCl3 plus 3H3 should be 3H3. So 3 hydrogen over here, well 6 hydrogen, but 3 moles of it, and then you'll have 2 AlCl3. You have 6 hydrogen HCl, and you have 2 aluminum, which should all balance out. You could write out the table again to double check, and it should give you the right amount. Like we can double count here. 2 aluminum, there's 6 chlorine, and then there's 6 hydrogen. There's 6 hydrogen over here. So that should answer this second question. And other questions which are more complex work pretty similar to these questions which we've just done. They take a little more time, but eventually you won't need to use a table. You can actually just quickly do the math on paper rather than having to do a whole table. As you can see, the table is a little more tedious. It's easier to just do the math in your head sometimes, but that's once you get better at balancing, it becomes easier to do that when you understand how balancing works. As a beginner, you don't want to make those mistakes those smaller mistakes where your equation could end up unbalanced and you end up spending more time solving a question and then going back because it's not adding up. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning in for the video. And make sure to hit the like and subscribe. It helps promote the channel as well and allows me to keep teaching. So thank you so much. All right, bye.